Hello there. This is Jason Eagle, your natural health authority, with another Healing Matters. And Healing Matters today, we're talking about fever. Ride the fever. Is a fever always bad? So again, this is Jason Eagle, your natural health authority. You can find my Facebook page, which is Jason Eagle QRA, or Strategic Healing. My YouTube channel is Jason Eagle QRA. My Facebook is Strategic Healing. From my website, strategichealing.us, not .com. And today we're going to talk about fevers. Okay. What should you do? What shouldn't you do? What can you have the bravery to do? What can I explain to you scientifically is like we've been taught wrong about what a fever is and what to do about it, and what it can do and what it can't do. And it does take some bravery, but again, the science is in this, and also the empirical evidence in terms of, I personally know this myself, which is when I've been able to go through a fever without reducing the fever or keeping it under control, I come out much healthier. Okay. And unfortunately, this has been in this world, this has been one of the signs and signals that where you hear, if you walk into a place and they take your temperature and you got a fever, they're like, you have to go. Like that's a sign of like you're bad. Oh, like you're going to make us sick. And there's some definitely science of that in terms where a person has a fever, they're spreading something the more. And so it makes sense to stay home and stay in bed. But do something other than, when people get into this one, which is, I don't remember the cold, is it starve a fever or is it feed a fever? Is it starve a cold? Is it feed a cold? Well, when we combine, which is when a person does this artfully, and I'll give you a good example. Again, there's some stories. Dr. Tent, DHS, Diverse Health Systems, he's my chiropractor. He's really the reason why I got into why I'm doing his very first person, actually the second, but the first real practitioner that practiced the QR, or the, not the QR, but the muscle testing, or the ART, which advanced something response testing, NRT, nutrient response testing, MRT, muscle response testing, advanced kinesiology. It's a QRA. It's all of the same thing. BDORT, bi-digital O-ring test, which is what I do as a practitioner, what Dr. Tent did on me, which is through muscle response testing, tested my body and found out where the problem was. I came in with symptoms. Can you fix it? And then put me on supplements. The very first supplements that I went to really see this, how it works, which I'm going to talk a lot about today, is standard process. And then that later then started me on my journey in terms of seeing how these nutrients work. Standard process has been such a huge miracle in my life. When I had certain infections, I remember when I had bad dental infection, I got some teeth missing still here, and I'm going to have implants done, zirconium implants, but I got to have some bone regrowth. And I've waited a long time because I got the infection out, I got the bad teeth out, and I'm going to have now my jaw moved in the right place, because it doesn't make sense because my jaw is out of whack. So I've got some bite splinting. Again, what should you put back? Is it your teeth that you want lined up, or is it the way that your jaw fits, which then controls your brain, because your neurology is there? Like, and if your jaw's out of whack, then it's squeezing your skull in the wrong place, and that's going to affect the nerves that go down to the rest of your. So what do you want? A nice, pretty smile, or do you want a healthy brain? Do you want a healthy immune system? You want a healthy neurologic system? Yes. So which do you fix first? Chicken or the egg? What is it? So when you're talking about dental, yes, number one, get infection out. And we're talking about fevers, which is a response to an infection. Okay, we're talking to other types, but I also, again, when you have dental infection and chronic sinus infection and stuff like that, you can have chronic fevers, which is not necessarily, let's say I've got the flu, I went up to 104 or whatever, and it's different. People can have, but the fever, that's what the show is about. It is a natural response. It is a healing mechanism of your body. Your body does this, and I'll get later into what do you do about it. But classically, they reduce the fever, especially when you've got a kid. You're going to go, oh my God, I've heard stories about like the brains got fried and stuff like that. And you got to reduce it if it gets to a certain. I've also had examples with my own child, as well as myself, which is if you're brave enough and you support the system and you let it ride, it clears things out. And there's wonderful stories about, like Dr. Tent on one of his latest videos, getting back to Dr. Tent, is he posted about seeing a patient in his office that had, number one, he had high PSA numbers. And before he saw Dr. Tent, this is before COVID, he had high PSA numbers and he was diagnosed with prostate cancer. And then what happened is he got COVID and he got sick. And his story is before before he saw Dr. Tent or whatever, he stayed at home, and actually his fever got up to 107, and it was about 107 for 4 days. And then after coming that, he didn't really describe exactly what he did, but obviously he stayed home and stayed in bed and rode it and didn't take acetaminophen, didn't take, Advil, didn't take the things that, Tylenol that we say, oh my, or aspirin, you got to get that down. And I'll talk about what are the things that you can do instead and the science behind that. And there's a whole real world of this, which is if you let your body do it, if you support it and then let it do its job, then you'll come through it. And what happened to this guy, there's many, many cases of people coming through fevers, as well as people coming through starvations, that they went in with tumors. They went in with all kinds of other things. A good example of these things, they had tumors in the brain. There's liver, hepatitis, a bunch of even STDs, some people that had, so either going through autophagy, which is they starve themselves. Either it's because they couldn't eat, they were in a fever and they couldn't eat or whatever, or people, let's say for instance, were trapped in a mine and they couldn't eat, that when they came out of it, these cancers were gone. So after this 107 fever and the COVID, all type of thing, and he came through it. And not only did he, because a lot of people are saying after the COVID, even after treatment, but especially after the fevers and going through that, they're like, I feel spectacular. Some people still have existing stuff. Some people have, now I have a heart murmur, or now I always have a wheezing or something like that. It's because they didn't support themselves during that. All right, or their body didn't have enough reserves. They didn't come out, they didn't come winning through that one. They come a little scathed. But people that do the high nutrients of vitamin C and calcium. So this is what Dr. Royal Lee, who was the creator of standard process, he was a doctor way back in the early 1900s. And he was very rich, and he was able to do a lot of research and then also treat people with this. And he invented stuff. Dr. Worley, he invented the drill. That is the dental. I think he became a dentist and then never practiced dentistry. He became a dentist so that he could also, he was famous. This is Dr. Worley, who started the company Standard Process, which then a lot of chiropractors and a lot of other natural health then follow this, because he created this line of whole food supplements. And he was the big one, along with Dr. Linus Pauling, who did all this research on vitamin C. And Dr. Royal Lee was very famous at saying that no one dies of a fever if they support vitamin C. If you have enough vitamin C in your body, and that's why they say orange juice, but I will tell you how orange juice is not the best form of vitamin C. It actually, it tastes acidy, but it's citric acid, but it's not, it actually is alkaline. And I'll get into how do we make sure that our body comes through this fight the winner, and then the new winner, where you recreate your body and you in fact come out where you can cure a lot of these things, which is there's whole therapies of this. Let me get into this as well too, is getting back to fever. So they notice this naturally, that people come through these things, and if they come through successfully, that what happens is they rebuild their body. We're talking about stem cells. We're talking about tearing down deposition, because again, when a person builds a tumor or has a extra growth, your body grew that and you fed that to grow that. So when a person either starves or changes goes through a fever type of thing, there's a huge breakdown. Let me read this about fever therapy. This is from a website that is actually, where is it? So is ISIL's Immuno-Oncology. This is from an international immunotherapy centers, places that there was a famous story about what was that? Ronald Reagan, as well as the Russian, I forget, whatever, one of the Russian presidents, whatever. This is called hypertherapy or hypotherapy, or no, I'm sorry, pyrotherapy or pyrotherapy, which means heat, pyro, like a pyromanic. And what they do is through hospitals, they can do it either through machines in terms of bring your body up. So it's an artificial fever. And while there's lots of stories about Ronald Reagan having different cancers, and he did have multiple cancers, and he had a colon cancer that was while he was president that they didn't tell you about. And there's two stories about it. One, that he went over to Germany and this place, and what they did is they brought his body temperature up to a fever. So they artificially induced a fever, controlled it. And sometimes what they'll do is so there's some cancer centers over in Europe, and that's what they do. And Germany, Russia, famous for this, a couple of the places. But what they'll do is they will take your body up to an artificial fever, bring you up to like 107 or something, 104, 107, keep you there for like over 24 hours. But at the same time, keep your brain cool. There's a couple different schools of thought where they let it happen, but they control it. Sometimes they also will inject you with something that makes you get a fever while controlling it. Sometimes they'll put you in a coma while this happens. And what happens is especially with people. So this is the study or this center over, and they're really famous for the metastatic cancer, meaning, oh my God, it's spread throughout your body. And like we used to be able to cut it, but there's so much we can't cut anything. So what they do is take people through a hypertherapy or pyrotherapy, bring their body temperature up for a long time, for not a long time, but for a period of time, and then bring them back and bring them out of it. And after it, what happens is it does, basically it kills the cancer and it kills a whole bunch of stuff. And so, yeah. So raising of the body's temperature through above mentioned means is artificially provoked from the outside and may be called a passive fever. The term fever therapy applies when the body's temperature control center in the brain is rated, and that creates a whole reaction inside the body. Let me go to where it had said something. Really liked what it said. Yeah. So basically, fever therapy has shown to be one of the most effective ways of cleansing the internal terrain. So it's cleaning out your blood, cleaning, because again, when cancer and other tumors grow, and others, and even stones and deposits and things like that, they grow in a dirty area. So that's the terrain. So if you've got dirty area, that's where the weeds grow. Or if you've got a dirty pond, that's where the mosquitoes grow. That's where the parasites grow. That's where the bad stuff that's eating you up. And your immune system is going after that. And the fever is a response to the immune system. The fever then happens, and then the body goes da, 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 and sends out the forces. And it starts beating back the war, but it also starts turning off the mechanisms that also keep and are feeding it. So the most effective ways of cleansing the internal terrain, reestablishing homeostasis, lifting the blockade of the system of basic regulatory, and restoring immune mechanisms to normal function. This is from the Cancer Center, Oncology Center, Internal Immunotherapy Centers. This is over in Germany. And this is a place where, like I said, Ronald Reagan went over to, and they cured his cancer by taking him up into a fever. Now, I'm talking about this show because I'm not suggesting that a person do that. What I am suggesting is when you do have a fever, what is the science behind what should I do? Now, we can reduce the fever, but what it does is it tends to prolong it and entrench it, and basically you've stopped your body from doing the process. There's also other therapies that I've talked many times about, which it's not the same, but it's close enough, which is saunas and contrast therapy, hot baths, taking hot baths and then cold bath, or again, the typical kind of Greek or Roman baths. Here in Detroit, they have a place called the Schwitz that I used to go to. And it's awesome. You go into this great hot room, and literally the room is like 190 degrees, almost 200 up at the top level, and then a cold bath, and you go back and forth. And it squeezes your body, and it makes this whole, it activates the system of your body going, oh, we're being attacked, and we need to repair and reorganize, and we need to get rid of this crap. And so it literally will clean your body out. And there's been many people who have gone through this that said, I came out of this thing, and including this COVID thing, which is, I came out of it, I was really sick, but now I had arthritis before, I don't have arthritis anymore. Now it moves, and so it's healed a bunch of stuff. How is that possible? Okay. So let's get back into what Dr. Royal Lee was saying from Standard Process, where he said, so the people that die of a fever or die of this type of stuff or have brain damage or something like that is because their body ran out of these very essential nutrients, which is your body doesn't really store them. And it does, but it only stores a small amount of reserves. And when it's gone, you go down. The plane goes down. But as long as you put these things in, and that's vitamin C and that's calcium. Now we're going to get into what is the best form of vitamin C and what is vitamin C really. It's amazing. You get into it, and that's why Dr. Royal Lee was like just a freaking genius in terms of, you think vitamin C is just orange juice and oranges and citrus. And now we get into this world where they've manufactured vitamin C, which is ascorbic acid or ascorbate or whatever, but it's made from petroleum products and it's made from black mold. So we've gotten into this debate. Is it the natural vitamin C? And is it the artificial vitamin C? And should we throw the baby out with the bathwater? So cut to the chase. I'm going to talk to you about what is the answer of vitamin C is actually taking both, but not relying upon any one, because vitamin C is ascorbic acid, the cheap vitamin C form that you can get where it says vitamin C put in, or high C has vitamin C. That is, they make it from petroleum products, meaning they make it from oil. They make it from the waste products that come off of making coal and using coal and also making oil and refining for gasoline in your cars and stuff like that. It's also a source of carbon. And so they use this, all the drugs everything that's synthetic is essentially made from the carbon that we get from petroleum products. Kind of not what you want to put into your body, but essentially what they say is all of the traces of the bad chemicals are taken out, and we've just concentrated the molecular structure of the carbon because it's a very readily available source of carbon. So in many respects, they're right, which is there's some toxicity, but the toxicity of certain things like vitamin C of ascorbic acid it's not really toxic, but it becomes toxic if that's the only vitamin C that you have. Because ascorbic acid will not cure scurvy. Again, scurvy, that's that old pirate thing. Yes. So when people were on a ship, so that's why the British were called limeys, is because, and this is the Americans too, anyone that's out to sea for a long time and eats what is very storable, which is hardtack or biscuits or something like that, has no vitamin C. And when they were out to sea for long enough and they didn't get fresh foods, that would have been the limes, the lemons, the apples, the greens. What they would do is they would get scurvy. And if it was really bad, you bleed out of every orifice and you bleed to death. You basically, and the first stages would be you bruise easily, your gums will bleed. So Dr. Royley was famous of saying in terms of the cataplex C, that's one of the things that they make the vitamin C, which is all a whole food supplement. But it's what do they call the pink toothbrush? So if you bleed at your gums, that is an early warning, or bruise easily, and it takes a long time. So grandma that has these black spots where she bumped her arm, like that's an early sign of scurvy, and vitamin C cures that. But ascorbic acid doesn't. So it has to come from a natural food form. Now, one of the reasons why we don't want to really completely rely upon orange juice and I'm saying, yes, have some oranges. It's better to have oranges and eat the whole thing, including eat the pith, which is eat that white stuff, a little bit of that white stuff with your orange, because that has all of the whole food factors. But again, what are the better sources of vitamin C? It would be in Cataplex C from Standard Process, the Premier Research Labs vitamin C, That is, they get vitamin C from amla fruit, which is an Indian type of, it's called Indian gooseberry. Organic cilantro, rose hips, hesperidin from a citrus, but it's the hesperidin that comes from blood oranges. So that's why it's good for your blood. That's why scurvy is a vitamin C deficiency. Scurvy is a blood disorder. You can't clot. And then quercetin. Quercetin is this other thing that's been shown very helpful for COVID and everything else. So, but vitamin C in its whole form has some ascorbic acid, but it has more things. So let me also tell you, there's a little buzz in this thing, which is there are vitamins that you never knew about. You never knew about. You never heard about it. Maybe you've heard about vitamin K. Okay. That's very important for vitamin C. That's one of these different, what's called the bioflavonoids of vitamin C. So in the family of vitamin C, all of the natural ones have some other of these very essential vitamins that you have to get in dietary form, especially when you're going through an illness, a fever, an infection. Vitamin K, vitamin P. Did you ever hear of vitamin P? I'll tell you what that is. Vitamin J. I never heard of vitamin J. Vitamin F. What is vitamin F? Never heard of these things. So let's start. So, and again, the whole food forms, which is the amla, even the oranges and grapefruits, and so whole food vitamin C. So that's what the synthetic ascorbic acid is missing, is it's just ascorbic acid. So it's not everything, and it doesn't have the thing that protects the blood. So vitamin K, we know about that. That one's for your bones. So when you take calcium, we want to take calcium for our bones. And there's a lot of calcium just in the water that we drink. There's calcium that's everywhere, but there's different forms, and the best form of the calcium. Now, this goes back to a lot of the old ways of the answers of what the old people used to do. I'm calling this the old man drink, the old man fizzy drink, which is, in those movies where he's like, got an upset stomach, I got a headache, and he'd mix this glass and it would be this fizzy water like Alka-Seltzer, and he would drink it. That's a bicarbonate of soda, calcium. So a bicarbonate of calcium bicarbonate. So the ones that are soluble in the bloodstream, which is when you're in a fever, you want to make sure that the body has enough of this. It's calcium citrate, calcium lactate, and calcium bicarbonate, which is, these are these calcium forms that we want to get into the system. But then it combines, why calcium and C? Because it has to do with when your body's in a fever, when the plane is going down, meaning we're losing altitude, what do? They start throwing baggages out of the ship or out of the plane to lighten the load. So your body during the fever, it starts eating up, or an infection, or stress. Okay, these are stresses that hit the body. So this can also happen when people work out too much, or get in an injury, or break tissues, car accident, or fall and hurt their hip or something like that. This can stimulate a process where the body starts robbing Peter to pay Paul. It breaks your bones down to get the calcium, because that's what feeds the immune system. We're talking about the immune system. The fever is the immune system's reaction to something's happening. Now, to keep it from being a bad thing, you provide the body these nutrients, which is vitamin C. And I'm suggesting there is a time for the ascorbic acid. And so ascorbic acid, you can get it in a powder form, very pure microcrystalline vitamin C in a ascorbic acid form. You take a little bit of that. You take a little bit also of the, the cataplex C from Standard Process. And then you also take some of the vitamin C in this whole food form. And you're going to cover all the bases, which is you're getting it in all of these factors, high levels of the ascorbic acid, plus all of the natural factors of vitamin K, vitamin P, vitamin J. These are the whole food forms. So let's talk about what these weird ones is. Start with vitamin F. We talked about K, that's for bones. Vitamin F is not really an not really a vitamin. It's actually an oil. And a couple of the same thing as vitamin E. Vitamin E is not really a vitamin, it's an oil. So now this gets into People that have chronic illness that then turns into a fever. I'm not talking about just getting infected by something like little kids. I'm talking about like long-term stuff, aging that turns into where people at the highest risk of whatever, which is predisposing. Now I've got heart disease, now I got diabetes. All of these things started somewhere. They started with not getting enough of these basic nutrients. And we know about, again, the fats. So the liver, gallbladder, you ingest fats, but you have to have something to break it down. So as I talk about the real down and dirty, deep stuff about health, always leads back to these filters: liver, gallbladder, kidney. Keep those guys clean, okay? And why? Because the fat, you want to be able to digest fats, because these fats, again, just like we talked about vitamin C, you want to get the really good whole food living things. You have to have life in the body. Plus, you need fat, which is your body stores fat in order to use it as food when it's under stress, and also use it as a pillow and force field to protect, so as an antioxidant. So when cells are being damaged or attacked, you need to keep the antioxidants up. Now, people know green tea and all these other things, these phytonutrients, chocolate, cacao, dark chocolate, red wine. These are things that are the antioxidants, okay? But what's the master antioxidants is vitamin C, and vitamin C in its whole food form that also includes these other things that are known as fats. I know it gets complicated, but listen to me. This is the thing in terms of what we figured out, okay? Providing the C, the D, and the fats. So vitamin F is what's called ALA, alpha lipoic acid. And it is it's an antioxidant, meaning it stops the oxidation process. It reverses the vitamin E, but it's in this tocopherol, so that's the deltanol. They act as an antioxidant. Again, think about how like many times a fat person is fat because they receive a lot, they don't like to get hurt. So, bubble wrap. A cell likes to put a bubble wrap force field around it to pew, pew, so things bounce off of it. So that's what fat does. Okay. Now then the vitamin C is the thing that also protects the integrity of the cells so that it can take the damage, repair the damage, and then go, oh, well, now what you did to me is, I use this as a great analogy of what an antioxidant is and what a vitamin C and what good nutrients is. Instead of you having an armor around you. Okay, so the world wants to basically protect you from everything that would hurt you. Make the fever go away. Won't let that hurt you, baby. I'll protect you forever. That's the smothering mother. No, what you really want is the father to say, okay, hey, I trust you. Now, here's fill your backpack up of what you need. Now go do it. Because the better response is, like I like to say, as rather than the big old fighter and the really good caged fighter, the better one, the best one, is the old man that knows Tai Chi, which is you can hit him and he steps out of your way, or if you do hit him, he then spins around and hits you back. Or if you do hit him, you spin him further away. So it is a response to a damage, which is, without that approach, this is what antioxidants in the body, this is the genius of God, the genius of how to live in this world. And you don't have to know it. You give your body these nutrients and it will do it. And it will do it beautifully. And it will know what to do at the right time. That means when your body gets infected, when your body gets damaged, instead of taking that and just repairing from it, repairing from it and saying, oh my goodness, thank you. You actually really helped me. That was good. You showed me where I was weak. You helped me to get further away over there. You helped me to get further on my path towards health and healing. So that's why when you get a fever, if you can support it with the vitamin C and its natural food forms, calcium, and then just support it, what will happen is then it will actually say, oh my goodness, now you help me to go further. So it actually makes you healthier. That's why it is used in cancer treatment, in a literally artificially producing this. Ronald Reagan, like I said, had this. And then the story about Dr. Tent in one of his latest videos is he had a guy who had this at 107. He got through it. He got healthier. And then afterwards, so before he went in, basically had the COVID, before he had this fever thing, he had a PSA number that was something up to like 13. And they also said, you've got cancer. Okay. He got the COVID. He couldn't get treatment because it was lockdown and everything like that. After this fever and after he recovered and after he got better, his PSA number went down to 3 and he no longer had cancer. Basically, it ate up the cancer and it healed him. And then there was other things like, for instance, the arthritis in the knees and all kinds of other things. Seen this repair heart disease, heart damage in terms of where people had coronary blockages. That's why the plant-based diet is actually very good when a person has, because it forces you to actually live off those stored cholesterol deposits and then go on high levels of the really good essential fatty acids. Take more of the good fats, get rid of the bad fats, and then eat a plant-based diet. What will happen is you will eat up the atherosclerosis, you'll eat up that bad stuff that's causing the heart attack. And so you don't have to get the quadruple bypass. And again, this also gets to a lot of the real bad conditions of heart disease and stroke, which is you had either a blood clot or you had a aneurysm, which is a blowout in your brain or somewhere in your body. That's the old age thing. That's the real big things. It's all related to that. Where did the blood clot come from? Where did the aneurysm come from? Essentially, it's scurvy, and your body just had a blowout. You blew your tire and leaked out. Well, it's a warning sign of you don't have enough of these nutrients. So the huge knowledge of this, of when you provide this for your body, especially when you go through a fever process, wow, you can come out on the other side, meaning not only not sick anymore, but like, wow, like I did a deep work. I healed my body. I got the miracle, the thing that you were looking for. Again, this can be done artificially. And there's went to this one website again where they talked about this oncology department, this German doctor, and the one that I'm not sure if it's the exact one that Ronald Reagan went to, but it's that same association. In 1950, by 1950, he had done over 100,000 of the pyrotherapy, especially people with what's called metastatic cancer, meaning it metastasized and it went through, and 0 side effects out of those 100,000. 0 side effects in terms of it really did no harm to them. But again, it helped most of them. And in fact, the studies show that it actually cured many and many of these uncurable cancers. But it's not just cancer we're talking about. I'm talking about anything. This is curing people of you can come out with diabetes, type 1 diabetes, that's an infection damage of the pancreas that is the one that you're born with, which is, they say, is uncurable. Many cases of the autophagy, which is fasting, starving, as well as the fever therapy. They went through a fever, came out on the other side of where these things. So what that means is next time you get a fever, rather than immediately lowering it, get on these nutrients. Now, again, like I said, not orange juice. Don't have orange juice be your only thing, because now we get into where we're really understanding is since it's the immune system that is the one that makes a fever, is your immune system. A fever doesn't mean that your body's broken. A fever means that it's perfect, that it's working, it's doing its job, right? That's what you want. So like they say, is a fever will burn out an illness. The fever will burn out the flu. The fever will burn out the cold, especially in kids. So it's the kids that you really worry about, which is like, really, because it can go very, very fast. And so if you go back to some of the early treatments, the old way, like the old man drink, which is the calcium bicarbonate. The old way was also, there was vitamin C and all of these factors in what was called barley water. Barley water is when you take the barley and then you would put it in water, soak it in water, and then you throw the barley out and drink the water. And barley, if you understand what barley is a grain, especially as a whole grain, unprocessed, has all of these nutrient factors. And it was a perfect balance of calcium and magnesium and all these other minerals, plus the vitamin C. And when you gave that to kids when they had the fever, what it was doing. And so kids is also adults. It's not just for kids. If it works for kids, it's going to work for adults, which means when you provide those special nutrients, and especially those living nutrients that are water soluble that you have to get in, or your body will tear itself apart and eventually will break it apart. So to keep the plane flying without having to tear it, you need a refueling. You need air refueling. That's what the military does. Is like, we'll just bring a plane in, we'll dump some into you while you're flying, and you can keep going. So providing the vitamin C, providing the calcium. So when people get into what's a good source of calcium, the grains, I love the grains. They're a great source of calcium. Minerals, the trace minerals that are also super important. Okay, let me get back to that. I got a little off track, but I'll get back to it, because what they found is we get into the body of this teeter-totter process of acid alkaline. Now I'm going to answer this in this one, which is people always say, I'm drinking my alkaline water. I'm making sure I'm having an alkaline diet. That's great, right? No, because in certain conditions, especially when you're dealing with infection, you don't want to alkalize the stomach. And orange juice, if you use that to, I'm going to drink my vitamin C. Well, what it does is it alkalizes. It actually alkalizes the stomach. And so what we want is the body's tissues are in a disease process. They're on the downward spiral. They're going down when the tissues outside of the stomach are acid. But that only happens when the stomach acid is too alkaline. So when the digestive tract is too alkaline, then that makes like a teeter-totter. When one is up, the other one's going to be down, or vice versa. So how do I alkalize the body? You acidify the stomach. So the hydrochloric acid, salt, that makes sure that you keep acid in the stomach. So the betaine hydrochloride, that helps to acidify the stomach. But what it also means is then that form of vitamin C is kind of out. So what you want to do is you want to take it in these whole food forms. The calcium comes from the greens. The greens is also giving you the vitamin K and all this other stuff. That's a great way to get calcium. You can also take the coral calcium, but the coral calcium, if you're having kidney issues, don't take. And a lot of times people at this stage is you're getting kidney issues too. A calcium now let me describe why the acid in the, because even in plant form, calcium is still micro level a little rock, and a rock can't get into a hard place. A rock can't get into your blood. It has to be turned into a juice. So the acid, so if you take vinegar and you pour it on baking soda, it fizzes up. Or if you take a piece of chalk, but remember in school, the writing chalk, and you poured vinegar on it, it would melt, because an acid neutralizes a base. And that's what calcium is. Calcium is a base. So since you need calcium in the bloodstream, how's it going to get there? It has to get there through the stomach being acid. And then when the calcium gets into the tissues, that's what that alkalizes that. So really, people drinking alkaline water and stuff like that, that's the wrong thing to do. You're fighting yourself. So you should acidify the stomach. That makes sure that you can get the calcium in there. So let me talk about too, is how this gets into when you are fighting this infection, fever, riding the fever, so that you can get the real great reset. Okay, the great reset of your body is your body uses an illness like this to actually reset everything, reestablishing homeostasis and the basic mechanisms for normal function in the immune system. So it resets the computer. Basically, like, when your phone goes all wonky, just turn it off, right? And unplug it and take it out. Or a computer, press that button and hold it, and it will reset. It will reboot the whole system. That's what a fever does, is it reboots the system. And again, it can happen without you knowing it, and you can support it, or you can also help it to do that. So helping it to do that would be some of these other therapies like the sauna, the contrast therapy, while providing vitamin C, calcium, essential fatty acids, That would be coming from like the fish oil, the coconut oil, that type of stuff, the alpha tocopherols, or I'm sorry, tocotrienols that come from the deltanol, that's the vitamin E. Then we get into, if you really want to be sophisticated and turn this into like a instead of just surviving it, you are literally like a surfer and you can surf this thing in the body. This is high levels of where we're talking about. When people really get healthy, they incorporate fasting into this, which means they do intermittent fasting. They can incorporate, and while they're doing this, they add some of these things as the antioxidants. So we talked about the fats being antioxidants. Let's talk about the real sophisticated one, because antioxidant is exactly what we say, which is anti-oxygen. Well, I thought oxygen was good. Yes, if there's two oxygens, if it's an O2, I can breathe it, okay? And if it's actually H2O, meaning an oxygen that's combined with a hydrogen, it has to have a partner. But if an oxygen has a singlet, just a one singlet of oxygen, and I'll explain where that came from, it's like the Tasmanian devil spinning around, or like, think about it this way. Antioxidants, because oxidation in the system is what's destroying everything. And I'll talk about how that gets released, but let me get this picture into your head. And oxidative stress, or a singlet of oxygen, is like, imagine a room of mousetraps that are set, right? And they're next to each other and they're ready to go. All you got to do is step on it, right? But what you do is take a ping pong and throw a ping pong in there, and that's going to hit one. Well, that one is going to go off, and then and that's going to bounce up in the air, and then that's going to hit another one. And next thing you know, the whole room is going and exploding. That's what a singlet of oxygen is. A singlet of oxygen comes from when there's damage in a cell. When a cell, that's why they say sun damage and gamma X-ray radiation, because what it's doing is these rays are hitting. Well, if I'm not out in the sun, where are these rays coming from? These rays are actually coming from inside the nucleus of your cells. So your cells has a nucleus, which is, your cells is a solar system and has a sun. And what happens is when there's not enough energy, or there's an attack, or there's damage, the sun explodes. It goes supernova, and it releases literally blips of light, which then hits the atomic structure of the oxygen that's in all of the water. So H2O, or oxygen. Oxygen is combined to a whole bunch, has some oxygens, but they're coupled, they are partnered, they are married. And what happens is a free radical damage from your own cells blowing up then shoots these oxygen, and then those ones go pew, and they hit other cells and knock other oxygens out. So what an antioxidant is things in the world like plants and stuff like that that developed a response, which is, I know what to do. And it becomes like that Zen master, which is, it becomes a way of not being damaged by it, but in fact taking the damage and spinning it faster, making it thereby stronger. So it means when you have enough antioxidants, when the cell gets hit with the damage, it goes, oh, goody. You actually helped me to do what I was trying to do anyways. It's genius. So antioxidants, as long as we provide antioxidants when we have damage, it takes that and it turns it for good. Like the Bible says, all things for good for those who love him and are called according to his purpose, which is, if you're a live, living human being, then this was built into your DNA. This was built into all the plants' DNA. This was built into every living thing, which is, I give you a choice to take this damage, and instead of crying and moaning and being, taken down by it, can it make you stronger? Can it literally make you more like a top? Instead of spinning you slower, it spins you faster. Like the guy with the basketball on his finger and someone bouncing into him. If he bounces just right, you actually make the ball go faster, which is great. You buy me more time. Now, these are analogies, but that's what we're talking about at the cellular level. And it's not hard. This science seems really complicated, but it is super simple, because these things, and a fever is super simple. Everyone's going to get one. And in fact, because I got one, does that mean I'm sick? No, it means you're healing from sickness. And as long as you support that process with these things. Now let's get into the antioxidants. the really powerful, like jujitsu ones. The basic ones are, like I say, vitamin C. That's just basically a basic training. But if you want special forces training, this is green tea. This is resveratrol. That comes from, so in Premier Research Lab make these liquid forms, which are these nanice forms, which is, they are these in-chain forms, which is you take them in your body and suddenly it turns into, basically your body doesn't have to work in having energy to crack the egg and cook the omelet. It's already done for it. So green tea, resveratrol, doesn't come from grapes, it comes from giant knotweed. Astaxanthin, it's a little pill that comes from like shrimp or krill or something like that. And it's this thing that makes the color. So the thing that makes shrimp, what makes salmon, wild salmon, that beautiful pink color, is because they eat in the Arctic, they eat lots of shrimp. And they eat this, and the shrimp eats lots of these other things that makes this almost orange color. Deltanol, that's the delta-tocotrienols. NAC, N-acetylcysteine. Turmeric, that's even in its whole food form, which is ground up turmeric. Melatonin, which we think that we take for sleeping, but again, melatonin is produced in the brain by the pineal gland, the pituitary pineal gland, not just DMT, dimethyltryptamine, but also melatonin. And melatonin is when we're sleeping, your body will produce it. And melatonin, slept well, produced over a good sleep, then during the daytime turns into serotonin and dopamine, which is, I feel good and I'm happy and I'm alive and God's talking. And so if we're low on melatonin, we can actually take melatonin. So when a person's during, let's say, those fever dreams, they'll eat these reserves up. But if you basically provide the melatonin, it comes in these drops. Now it becomes the super antioxidant, because astaxanthin and melatonin are one of the very few ones that actually crosses the blood-brain barrier. Not many of those things do. Then also cleaning up the mess, which is Mediclay, that's the bentonite clay, Chem Detox, which is modified citrus pectin. Basically, it's the gauze that's soaking up the blood from the wound. You want something to soak up the waste products and take it away. Zeolite is another thing. So this is an art, which is when a person gets sick. Quercetin is in there too. CoQ10, PQQ, that keeps up the oxidation or the antioxidants within the cell. It keeps up the ATP process. And so basically you want to keep the sun alive. You want to keep the nucleus of the cell, that's also what's keeping the DNA from becoming broken apart. So on what really true healing is that not on the outside level, and the fever is a response of that, but it's really the cells down. It really is going through this where it's running the factory and running, and it's burning itself up. That's why it feels like the fever's burning. But what it does is like sometimes when you buy a car and they put in the carb, the carb cleaner. How do you clean out all these deposits? Put this stuff in there and then run it high, run it hot, run it at high RPMs, and that will clean all that stuff out. That's what a fever does, is it literally cleans the system out and upgrades it, does the great reset, and then brings it back to, what was this computer supposed to do? What were these cells supposed to do? What was the flesh supposed to be? What was it supposed to be on a chemical basis? And if we feed it correctly during this process, it's guaranteed that you will be your better self. And you'll not only come through it, but you'll also, wouldn't it be great to come through like the great philosophy, instead of going, glad I'm over that, hope that don't ever happen again. Instead of being like, oh, goody. I couldn't believe that this turned out to this. Now I can believe. And when it comes again, I'll be ready. And in fact, bring it on, baby. Bring it on. That's what we want in terms of psychologically, spiritually, and also physiologically. Meaning, instead of avoiding the thing that's going to happen anyways, and instead of seeing it this way, see it this way. But you can't if you're not prepared. If you're not prepared, you better be on the run. You better come through it, okay? Because it can take you out, and life can take you out. But, these natural responses, if you prepare yourself and you do it correctly, you will come out your better you, which then now you will not fear it. And that's the biggest thing, is Of course, you're going to fear the bear that put scratches on you and you barely survived, right? However, really, it's a different thing. And fear, it's the fear that makes you actually sicker. But the sickness made me afraid. So if you can be sick and not afraid, and then be confident because you've done what you've done, you know what it can do, and you've seen it happen before, and you follow through it. And like, again, like all of the firefighters and heroes say, I'm not really a hero. It's just I followed my training, put my head down, and I just went through, and I just did it automatically. And it does it. And I came through, and my body, it's like my body knew what to do. That's the innate human healing ability of the immune system, the innate healing ability, which is what you were born with. But then it's also that informs and lives together with the adaptive, which is what it learned from being beat up, what it learned from being attacked. There's what it has and what it learned. You combine those together, you have the perfect system of a adaptive, and that's the immune system. So it even means, instead of really going, I hope I never get sick, it is, I'll prepare myself for when I do. And many times you'll get sick when you're really healthy. You won't even know it. That's why little kids can get this stuff, and it's like they get a sniffle for a day and it's gone. Or they feel like they're a little grumpy for a minute and then it's gone. What that is you see the immune system went like boom, very, very quick. And as we get older, it just drags on and on and on. Well, could we get back to that child ability, which is like, I really went through this quick, and a bad thing was a good thing because I was prepared for it. And it's basic chemicals, and it's basic living, and it's basic truth, which is real life begets real life. So whole foods and good foods. And if you can't eat well, then get them in the supplement form, the standard process, the Premier Research Labs, biotics. There's a great different companies. Many of them, you can only get them from people like me. Should I just buy the cheapest stuff? No. Go to a person who that's their career in terms of knowing this and knowing it in and out, and also being, take some from here, take some from here. I know what the best is. And oftentimes too, also a person who's, I've gone the next step, which is the best is what I can grow myself. I have a farm, and the juice that I juice from my own vegetables is nothing compared to like the stuff that I buy or the animals. And I've seen that work. I've seen my body's immune system get healthier and stronger, and have that couple day fever being in bed, and even where it's like I'm loopy, and I come out of it a week later or 2 weeks later or a month later going, wow, like I'm so much stronger than I was before. I'm so much smarter than I was before. I'm so much happier than I was before, but I'm also even more stressful than I was before. And now so it comes with some good and some bad. And part of the bad is just because now that I know so much better, now I know much better. And now the world has become bigger, and I had a bigger part of it. And that comes with responsibilities. That comes with, like, sometimes you kind of go like, in the Matrix, which is, I wish I would have never have known. No, don't do that. Don't do that, because even though it feels like that, the truth is that this is a work, and you can get stronger. And the stress and the oppression makes you stronger. It's there to help you. It's just a scary monster in disguise. So fevers, go through this and figure it out. And next time when it happens, write it out and get your stuff together, and you'll be surprised as to how quickly. Again, the fever won't last as long. These treat the fever, it gets the fevers down, but it also then helps to use this as a process of healing. Until next time, thanks. Bye-bye.